त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशङ्करं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ओम नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहित प्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ओम प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। Pranams everyone. We are in the second chapter, Sloka number 60. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitah indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manah. So Bhagavan is talking about sensory discipline. And here in this shloka is talking about what happens if there is no sensory discipline. He says just like, even for a yatato hayapi kaunteya, even for a wise, even for a striving person, and even if he is a vipaschitaha, even if he is a wise person, these sense organs are powerful. Indriyani pramathini and haranti prasabam manah. They carry away the mind forcibly. So Bhagavan is giving a warning that be careful about your sense organs. So in the last class, Venugopalji, you brought out a question. Do you want to actually bring out that question again so that we can discuss?
Yeah, sure, Guruji. Actually, basically, my point, the question that propped up was like, is there a control of the sense except through mind, actually? That is not all control or any control of senses always through mind. And so our Damaha and Samaha, what we said, are they not literally one? So that was the question, sir.
Okay. So for that, let's quickly do a quick recap of what is the Sukshma Sharira that we have. The Sukshma Sharira consists of, we know, 19 elements, which are the Pancha Prana, Pancha Karmendriya, Pancha Jnanendriya, and one Antakarana split into 4. One organ, internal organ, which we call using 4 different names for 4 different functions. The sense organs are the Pancha Jnanendriyas, the 5 sense organs. They are different from the one Antakarana, which is Mano, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara.
Okay.
Now, so these organs are different. That is different, number one. When the second point that you raised is, are the sense organs not controlled by the mind? In that sense,
yes.
If we are actually controlling the mind, should it not control the sense organs also? So,
or as a corollary, when I say I control my sense organs, actually I am controlling them through the mind.
Okay. So, couple of points here. First of all, our Shastras say, and we also know, our sense organs also have ragadveshas. They have their own likes and dislikes. The sense organs, the eyes, for example, like to see certain things, do not like to see certain things. The same thing with our ears. The music that we want to hear and as against what we don't want to hear, each sense organs also have their likes and dislikes. The second thing, the control, when we are talking about control, it is all done by the one Antakarana, we can say that. But as I said, what is mind? Mind is nothing but a bunch of thoughts, or the bunch of thoughts when they are of the nature of whether to do or not to do, then it is, we call that function to be mind, or that function is handled by what we call as mind. The decision themselves, when they are actually made, we say the decisions are made by intellect. So sometimes, and the emotional faculty is the mind, the rational faculty is intellect. In some places, for some time, at certain circumstances, our mental faculty, our emotional faculty may be more powerful than the rational faculty. In some places, the rational faculty will control the emotional faculty. But what happens when the emotional faculty is powerful? It makes the rational faculty agree to its approach. That's why in the morning when we want to wake up, we have made up our mind in the night that we will wake up early and go for a jog or do yogasana or do meditation. That is what the intellect has made up its mind before going to sleep. But then when the morning comes, the body, the sense organs have their own likes and dislikes. They are refusing. The mind is also refusing. And therefore the mind will convince the intellect not to get up of the bed. So that's how our Shastras do a sort of a split of how these indriyas work vis-a-vis the mind, vis-a-vis the intellect. To control the sense organs, if the central sense organs likes and dislikes are so powerful, it will convince the intellect to do what it wants to do. So it's the sense organs which is sending the signals to the intellect through the mind, you can say, and convincing the intellect to do what it wants to do. So in that sense, controlling the sense organs through the intellect is equally important.
So it is like, for example, I mean, just to take a very trivial example, let's say, for example, I like jalebi very much, and the very sight of jalebi in a shop, without a mind or thought or anything coming into play, triggers a desire and to come in, and it needs to kind of something like that. I mean, is that what you mean?
So your voice got I couldn't hear you the last part.
No, actually, what I was I kind of saw what you said. Like, I was just trying to solidify my understanding. Like, is it something like, for example, if I have a deep liking for jalebi and I am crossing a shop and I see that, and without so-called mind coming into play, just the sight of it triggers a desire, just the sight of it without a mind or thought or anything, triggers a desire, and at that time the intellect has to get in and say, no, you can't have it because you're diabetic, you'll have a problem or something like that.
Exactly.
Kind of take over, something like that.
Exactly. The control of both the mind as well as the sense organs have to be done through the intellect.
Okay. Thank you.
And therefore, that's why Shastras say, have your rational faculty sharpened. Make sure that the intellect is taking the call at every point of time, and feed the intellect with the right knowledge so that it is able to take the right decision. And that's why Shastric study is very important, because the intellect gets to know what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so.
And just to add, okay, the control, right? The word control and then the thought of sublimation, like Guruji rightly said, right? Feed the intellect with the right kind of knowledge and understanding so that your desires are sublimated. So because controlling is, okay, I stay away from the jalebi, right? But in my mind, I can continue to, harp on the thought of eating jalebi. So somehow you have to make it understand through the use of intellect that jalebi is not at all required, and somehow sublimate that whole desire rather than just controlling it.
To start with, you're right.
If I say sublimate,
go ahead.
Here, my own question is, if if there is a sublimation of it, then that means that desire is killed. The next time I see jalebi, I will not have that desire. But then there is no role for intellect the next time. I mean, it is kind of understood and it is kind of conquered, if I can use that word. But when that sublimation is not there, that is when the role for intellect is required.
Correct. And
Yes.
both of you are right. In fact, in the next sloka, Bhagavan is going to talk about how the mind can actually work. I mean, these two slokas, this sloka 59 and 60, we are talking about Damaha. 60 onwards, Bhagavan is going to talk about Shamaha, how the mind can actually be a creator of the problem, or rather, in terms of the desires, how the mind can take us away. And as you rightly said, once you conquer the desire, then there is no need for even for the sense organs to have this feeling. But having said that, there will be always something what is called as rasam. There will be some element of still some vasanas left behind, even after we supposedly conquer the desire and control the sense organs. Bhagavan is going to talk about that also. We'll see that. And as to how we can actually ensure that even that rasam can be overcome. So, Indriyas have to be controlled and it has to be kept on a check. This sloka, Bhagavan says, Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasamam manaha. So even for a wise person, it is very difficult. Even for a wise person, the sense organs can take away the mind. The sense organs can control the mind. Instead of the mind being the controlling factor, the sense organs can take away the mind. So what is the takeaway here? Even if for a person who is putting effort, this is the case, then what to say about one who does not? So it is important to discipline the sense organs, to let it leave like that. In Tamil they say kandade kolam, there is some word there, kandade kolam, kondade kalam, or something like that. That allowing the mind, or there is a song also. Yes, Venugopal.
Kandade kolam, kandade kachi. Kondade kolam, kandade kachi.
Yes.
If I remember right.
Yes.
Like
That's the one. Or we say, kan pona pokile kaal pogalama, kaal pona pokile manam pogalama. It's all same. Letting the sense organs rule your mind or your intellect will lead to disaster. So Bhagavan says, even for a person who is putting the effort, it's difficult. So put the effort. Do not let it go, because otherwise you will be doomed. What will be the doom? Bhagavan will say that in the next few slokas. The second point, what we have to take away from here is Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashitaha means, for a wise person, for a striving person, this is difficult. So strive harder. Another thing that we have to understand is, when we are striving, there could be failures. So we think we have controlled the sense organs, but then we falter, we fail. At that time, don't get disheartened. Don't take it as a failure. Don't take it and say, okay, this is not for me. Don't let it go. Don't leave it. Strive even harder. Persevere. Until we control the sense organs, keep trying. That is the takeaway that we should have from this sloka. If we let the sense organs behave the way they want, without any control or discipline, then haranti prasavam manaha. We will lose our mind. In this world, whatever we lose, we can get it back. That's not a problem. We might lose money, but in a few years' time, we can get it back. As they say, if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. If character is lost, everything is lost. So if we lose money, it's not a big loss. And in fact, if we lose money and we gain vairagya, then it is actually a big gain, because what we have gained is much more than what we have lost. But if we lose our mind, haranti prasabam manaha, if we lose our mind, that is the greatest loss. Losing mind, we think, if I actually let my sense organs rule my mind, so what? It's not actually making a big difference. It may not make a big difference at this point of time, or even in this life, or even in the next few lives. That's fine. But over a period of time, there will be a big issue. That's why when we see in patients from a nearby mental hospital, we will see the importance of a good mind. What is lacking in them? The mind is not in their control. And that's the problem. So keeping the mind in check is very important. Keeping the mind under control is very important. So do not take this lightly. The status a human gets in the society is because of the mind they possess. Having a good mind is responsible for the respect that we get in the society and also for our growth. So the mind has to be protected, has to be shielded at all times. The mind is within the body. And that has to be protected by us. It is the greatest gift. What is the greatest gift that Bhagavan had given us, Ishvara had given us in this life? This nice body and this mind. A lot of times, a lot of people may not have the same luxury. So we have this. So we have to take care of our mind and body. So bad habits like drinking, smoking, they will damage the body. They will spoil the body and the mind also. When we drink, or what happens is the willpower is also lost. So as a person keeps enjoying sensory pleasures, what happens is over a period of time he will lose his mind. And that's the fault, or we can say that's the weakness of not having sense discipline. That's the drawback of not having any sensory discipline. Not having sensory discipline, what do we lose? We lose our mind itself. Easiest way to destroy our mind, let our sense organs rule the roost. If the sense organs keep going to the sense objects continuously, every time it looks for only enjoyment, the mind will be damaged. And what happens if the mind is lost? If the mind is lost, there cannot be any spiritual sadhana. Nididhyasana has to be performed by the mind. The mind must be protected. Mind must be strong. If the mind is preoccupied with all these sensory enjoyments, the mind cannot focus on any spiritual growth at all. And thus, in this case, Bhagavan is trying to talk how jnana has to be converted to jnana nishta. He is giving the sadhanas for converting jnana to jnana nishta, and especially the diet control that we need to have for bringing this jnana to jnana nishta. So sensory discipline is very important. Otherwise, jnana to be converted to jnana nishta is not possible. Now 61. 60 and 61. Yeah, 61. तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्य इन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्य इन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. So Bhagavan here, what he does is advises what a good viveki should do to attain jnana nishta. Viveka, we know what is Viveka. Viveka is a knowledge or discrimination, the ability to discriminate between what is permanent and what is transient. Ability to discriminate is called Viveka. And here Viveka, we talk about what is the permanent thing in the world, what is impermanent or transient. Vivekinaha kartavyam kim. What should a Viveki do? Tani sarvani samyamya. Sarvani tani. Sarvani tani means, tani means those. Sarvani, all those. All those means what? All those sense organs. Samyamya. Having restrained, having disciplined, having controlled all the sense organs. Basically, Bhagavan is talking about damaha. In other words, having restrained all those sense organs means over a period of time by practicing sensory discipline, the sense organs must be brought under control. That's the first thing that a person must do. Then what he needs to do? Yukta asita matparaha. Yuktaha. Yuktaha means this refers to a person who has mind control. It means a person with a controlled mind. What is mind control? We'll see it from the next sloka. Bhagavan says, Yuktaha, a person who has got control of mind. Asita. Asita means should remain. Should remain in what? Should remain in nididhyasana. Because Bhagavan is talking about nididhyasana as a sadhana to convert jnana to jnana nishta in this section. Yukta asita. And what should remain in his mind? The mind is free from the sense organs. So he has removed the sense organs. He has removed all the sense objects from the mind. All the unwanted sankalpas he is removed. Where should it now focus? What should be the mind's goal? Bhagavan says, matparaha. Yukta asita matparaha. Matparaha means with the thought of me as a supreme goal. With the thought of me as the supreme goal means it refers to nididhyasana. Ishvara Swarupa in the mind. What is Ishvara Swarupa? Ishvara Swarupa is Atma Swarupa. So with the Atma Swarupa in the mind, with me in the mind as the supreme goal. So Bhagavan is saying in the first line, having restrained or having disciplined all the sense organs over a period of time, a person with a controlled mind, with the mind also disciplined, should do nididhyasana, should remain in nididhyasana with the thought of Brahman or Atman as his final goal, as the supreme goal. So all the three sadhanas Bhagavan has given. Damaha, Shamaha, Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is the sadhana. Damaha and Shamaha like the diet. Control for the medicine called Nididhyasana. Then, so Tani Sarvani Samyamya Yukta Asita Matparaha. Now in the second line, Vashehi Yasyendriyani. He means because Yasya Indriyani. Yasya Indriyani, whose sense organs, Vashe. In Tamil also we say Vashattala Varla. Vashe means under control. Vashe are under control. Tasya prajna pratishtita. The knowledge of that person becomes firm. So Bhagavan says in the second line, because whose sense organs are under control, the knowledge of that person becomes firm. So jnana will become jnana nishta for who? For who the sense organs are under their control. So if the sense organs, which means if the sense organs are not in control, we will not get jnana nishta. In fact, if the sense organs are not in control, even getting jnana is extremely difficult. Even if by, what Bhagavan is saying is, even if by chance, which is very unlikely, that this person gets jnana without sense control, then definitely he will not get jnana nishta. Because for that, senses are to be under control. And this has to be firmly deposited in our mind, has to be firmly placed in our mind, has to be firmly kept in our mind, that sensory discipline is the first step to spirituality. It is the first step to spirituality, and it is also the last step to spirituality as well, because jnana to jnana nishta is the last step, and even for that sensory discipline is important. When we start on the spiritual path, we should start with sensory discipline. In fact, spiritual life is nothing but sensory discipline. And if we want to, if you continue to have discipline with regards to our sense organs, we will get jnana nishta. And how is this to be understood? How long this this disciplining sense organs is necessary? When we plant a seed, until the time it grows to a tree, and even after its until its very end, the one thing we have to continuously do is we have to water the plant, water the tree. There cannot be a time when we say the watering is enough, we can stop watering the plant. It cannot stop at all. In the same way, the sensory discipline is to be followed until the end of spiritual life, until jnana nishta. There are other things that the plant may need. So for a certain kind of, for example, a fence around the, initially against, when it is not grown to a tree, it's just at the plant stage, we will have a fence around it to protect it. That fence may not be needed once it grows into a tree. Or there are some fertilizers that we drop at the initial stages for it to grow. That may be stopped after a while. But watering has to be done throughout. In the same way, the sensory discipline has to be followed throughout the spiritual life. Damaha and shamaha have to be followed right from the start. Until when? Until it becomes our swabhava. Until it comes naturally to us. That's why Bhagavan, whose sense organs are under his control, Bhagavan says, sense, for people who have their sense control in place, their knowledge becomes firm. So 59 to 61, 58 onwards, Bhagavan had talked about damaha. Yada samharate chayam. From there until this 61, Bhagavan had talked about damaha. We have only seen this as a sample. Again, in chapter 4 and other chapters, we will again see damaha. And that's why you will see a lot of repetition. Third chapter, again, Bhagavan will talk about damaha and shamaha again. Again, in fourth chapter, he will talk. The same concepts he will give in different manner. Now, in the next sloka, Bhagavan is going to talk about the next sadhana, which is shamaha. Sloka number 62. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. So from this sloka onwards, Bhagavan is going to talk about then another important discipline, shamaha, the thought discipline, the mental discipline, which is more difficult than even sensory discipline. So before we see what Bhagavan has said here, let us do a small vichara and then we go into the sloka. We saw nididhyasana is the sadhana that turns jnana into jnana nishta. And that sadhana is performed by our antakarana, which is the mind and intellect. And for the mind specifically, for the mind to do nididhyasana, the mind has to be calm. And we saw the mind can lose its calmness in two ways. One, when, just as you pointed out, Karthikji, when the indriyas keep association, somebody is trying to join, I don't know who it is. When indriyas keep association with the sense objects, just as we saw, in the early morning, we want to do this meditation in the early morning before the indriyas start its business with other objects. We want to get started and do with meditation, because the mind can lose its calmness when the sense organs come into certain sub-subjects. We wake up, we see a message on the phone, some people lose their calmness. Why did that person message this way? Why did they do this way? The moment the sense organs come into contact with sense objects, the mind can lose its calmness. So what do we understand from here? That the mental peace can be lost due to the association with the external sensory objects. That's one. And suppose when we sit for meditation, we do not have any association with any object at that time. And we think we are going to meditate today nicely. But then once we sit for meditation, what happens? The mind again loses its calmness. Even then our mind is not calm when we have sat for meditation. And what could be the reason? The mind is not associated with the present. Because the mind is not associated with the present, it can lose its calmness. Either because of certain past experience coming back to the mind, or because of certain future anxieties that comes to the mind. So what it means, even if the mind is controlled, or rather even if the calmness of the mind is, if we are able to control it to some extent by sensory discipline, or if we are able to bring some calmness into the mind by some sensory discipline, even that may not be enough, because the mind can lose its calmness on its own. And if we look at our mind, it will be either in the past or in the future. It will be seldom in the present. So even when we are eating our food, we will say, the last time this dish was actually very nicely made. Or we could say, what it is going to be happening tomorrow, what are we going to have tomorrow for lunch. The mind will not be in the present. And that's what happens when we are in workplace, we think about what's happening at home. When we are at home, we are thinking about what we need to do in the office. Even when cooking, when people are cooking, their mind will not be in what they are cooking, but about what is happening there, what is happening in the other house, in the other rooms, or in their friend's house, or whatever happened last week. All those things could come. Even when bathing, our thoughts go everywhere. So these are just few examples. Our mind is never in the present. Our mind will be either preoccupied with something in the past, or it will start thinking about something in the future. And thereby, it loses its calmness. This discipline of thought is called as shamaha or mano nigraha. And how do we do that? First, we have to understand this mind is part of antakaranam. I just mentioned some time back, there is one internal organ called antakaranam. And it's got 4 parts to it. Mano, buddhi, chittam, ahankaram. So one part is mind. Another part of this antakaranam is called as chittam, memory. What happens is, whatever we had experienced in the past, that could have been registered in that memory. And from those memories, the mind will pick up some thoughts randomly, or it might just got connected through something we might be talking about something. The mind will immediately pick up something in the past because of the linkage, and it will bring back that thought. And the mind will keep dwelling on that thought. The mind by itself will start pick up something unwanted thought about the past or about future, and then it would keep dwelling on it. So the mind will talk about, and some people might say, no, my mind is overworking because I've got so many responsibilities. And those responsibilities are coming out. And that's why my mind is overthinking. Thing is, everybody has got responsibilities. Nobody can be without any responsibilities. And the responsibilities will be there for everybody until the last day of life. Even for a lazy man, there is a responsibility that he has to eat the next meal. He has to find out where his next meal is. So the mind can and will think of responsibilities. So what is shamaha then? Shamaha is training the mind not to think of the past, nor to think of the future, but to make it only think about the present. That is called as mental discipline. And how do we do that? Even when we are sitting for example, meditation, dhyana, we are going to sit for meditation. When we sit for meditation, we should first do an auto-suggestion. An auto-suggestion to keep telling us, I will not bring any thoughts from the past. Any thought, I will keep watch on the thought. Any thought that comes from the past, I will reject it. And I will not bring any thoughts about the future. Anything that comes, I will reject it. So we should take a sankalpa that I should not take any sankalpa. I will not take anything of the future, anything of the past. And unfortunately, the mind can be controlled only by the mind only. For us to control the mind, we need the mind to control the mind. So we will have to split our mind. We'll have to split the mind and take this kind of sankalpa that whenever a thought arises, immediately another part of the mind immediately needs to wake up and say, no, that thought is not allowed. It's something on the past. Or that thought is not allowed. You are thinking about the future. And we need to bring this as a regular practice. We will do more vichara on the mind later, but this is one of the ways, or this is most important way to actually control the mind. We talked about damaha earlier. What it meant, it is not about, when we said sensory discipline, we didn't say sensory discipline is about not talking, not seeing and all. It is about not talking, not seeing, not hearing unwanted things that can delude my mind. that can make my mind lose its calmness. If I don't want to see somebody's profile on Facebook, because if they can actually bring me unwanted thoughts, then I should avoid seeing them. There is no point in seeing that and then making ourselves feel bad about it. So that is called a sensory discipline. Damaha does not mean not using sense organs at all. It is about withdrawing on those things that are unnecessary, or on those things that can create some problems for my mind. Using the sense organs only for transactional purposes. But what happens is, even if we use the mind, or even if we use the sense organs for transactional purposes, for merely doing the transaction, certain unwanted things will get inside us automatically through this transaction. Say, even when we are sitting for this class here, somebody speaking in the other room or somebody talking about something else, if we kind of overhear that, although we are focusing here, it might get into our ears. So these unwanted things can go through our ears, eyes, all those things. So that's because of being in certain situations. Some unnecessary, unwanted things will enter our mind through the sense organs. Not that we wanted them to enter our mind, but due to circumstances, it has happened. We cannot avoid. So, for example, if we are walking in the roads, we see a poster, we see something, or we open a website, suddenly something pops up. What can be done? We cannot totally avoid the world entering our mind. We will have to accept that certain unwanted things will enter our mind. What should be done then? If we are not able to sort of limit it at the sense organs level, if we are not able to control it totally through the sensory discipline, we will have to ensure that it is controlled at the mental level. Only then we will be saving ourselves. We will have to arrest it at the mind. How? By not giving any importance. We should not give it any importance. If it happens, okay, so suppose if we see something they are like this, okay, let them be like this. Don't give any importance. We should not let it delude our mind. Because the moment the mind gets affected, it will go into delusion, moham. It will go into delusion. What happens in moham? We will take the wrong decisions. Our mind will then influence the intellect to take all kinds of wrong decisions. It will make us see all the good things as bad, bad things as good. So we should not let it disturb our mind. And how does an object that we see, a picture of a thing or a news item or something that we hear from others, how does that actually disturb our mind? Bhagavan says it does not happen immediately. It happens step by step. It's not that the moment we saw we get disturbed. It happens in a step by step manner. And what does a person lose? Through this, because it has affected. And how does it affect that person? Bhagavan explains this in this Sloka and the next Sloka. Bhagavan says no object or nothing will disturb us or disturb our mind or delude us when we see it for the first time. We will not be attached to that object at the first sight. That's not possible. But only when the mind keeps dwelling upon that object, only when we keep fancying about that object, it will start creating problems for us. When we start dwelling upon the object, it is called as Vishaya Dhyanam. Vishaya Dhyanam, when we do it, it will start affecting us. That's what Bhagavan says here. Dhyayate vishayan pumsaha. Vishaya dhyanam only Bhagavan says. Dhyayate vishayan pumsaha. Pumsaha means for a person. Pumsaha. Dhyayataha. Dhyayataha means one who constantly dwells on, constantly is thinking about what? Vishayan, sense objects. So the mind has a tendency to dwell upon one thing or other in the world. Even if we want to sleep, say we come to bed, we want to sleep. We put the phone down, but we are not getting sleep. What happens? Immediately the mind starts working. It starts dwelling upon things, that unwanted things keep coming from the past, or anxiety about the future comes out. All those things come. Or we start thinking about, why did he do this way this morning? Or why did she behave in this manner? Why did they talk to me like that? We will start dwelling upon it. We are all experts in it. Vishaya Dhyanam. One thing is, this Vishaya Dhyanam comes very naturally to us, but this Ishvara Dhyanam is so very difficult. If we say, okay, bring the thought of Ishvara again and again into your mind, it is very difficult, extremely difficult. But think about the person you don't want to think about, or the person you don't like, easy. It keeps coming to our mind. And for that Vishaya Dhyanam, you need not sit in Padmasana or any kind of posture. Wherever we are, whether we are showering, cooking, eating, driving, whatever it is, easily we are able to do the Dhyanam, Vishaya Dhyanam of it. And it could be different things for different people. It could be, for some people, could be overly attached to money. What's happened to my stock market? Where is my money? How is it doing well, doing not good? What will happen? Should I buy that property, not buy that property? Should I buy that stock, not stock? So some people, they are focusing only on relationships. That person behaving this manner, this person behaving that manner. Those things are actually predominantly taking. Some people, it could be work. And what happens, Bhagavan says, the first thing that you lose by doing this Vishaya Dhyanam, you lose your mind. Vishayam means sense objects. By thinking about sense objects, you lose your mind. And according to Vedanta, what it says is, at this level itself, the person should use his discrimination and ask question whether it is worthwhile to dwell upon that object. Is it worthwhile? And if our mind is already deluded, what it will say? The mind will say, yes, it is worthwhile thinking about that object, because the next time I should not have faced this problem, and therefore I need to think deeply about this. Nothing like that. It's only that we have given too much importance. If we ignore it, we will be better off. Not by thinking deeply on that, by ignoring it, we will be better off. And what will happen? By thinking deeply, we think it is healthy, it is unhealthy. That unhealthy thoughts will lead to more and more problems. And if we are alert, if we are intelligent, and with the help of Shastric knowledge, we can nip it in the bud. Because the first thought that comes in is always feeble. The first thought is always feeble. And it is easy to distract the mind when the first thought comes. When the first thought comes, if I am able to distract it to something else, some other thought, at least it need not be Ishvara thought, but something that will not disturb my mind, if I am able to focus that immediately, I am good. Which means I have got good Viveka Shakti, I have got good Shastric knowledge, my intellect is still being able to control my mind, my intellect is slightly stronger than the mind at this point of time. The first thought comes. For some people, even when the first thought comes, the intellect is not able to control the mind. And there what happens? The mind just carries away even the intellect. But when the first wave, the feeble wave, when it comes, it's a ripple, just a ripple at that point of time. Before it gets bigger, huge, before it becomes a huge wave, we will have to nip it in the bud. If we let it pass, it might look feeble at the beginning. It might look just like a ripple in the beginning. So what if I think about it, we might say, but it becomes extremely powerful in the next stage. And what is the next stage? Bhagavan says, Sangasteshu upajayate. Sangaha. Sangaha means fancy, attachment. Attachment need not be only positive. Even this, whenever we say Sangaha or Ragaha, we have to understand it includes Ragaha as well as Dvesha. It always comes as a pair of opposites. So this attachment towards them, Teshu, towards them, on the sense object this person dwells upon. It could be an object, it could be a situation, it could be a person, it could be something in the past, it could be an anxiety, whatever. Sangasteshu upajayate. Upajayate means arises. By constantly thinking about them, an attachment towards them increases. So we begin to develop a fancy for that object. When we say sensory objects, as I said, it's not, it could talk about anything. People, relations, objects, situations, everything. Sangaha, it's a feeling. And here if we look at attachment, from that standpoint, we can say it's a strong like. Say, for example, I got a strong like for something. It could be an object, it could be a car, it could be a house, it could be a person, it could be anything. I have this feeling, it's wonderful, it's attractive. I have this feeling, it's a source of joy. And when I consider that thing to be a source of happiness for me, it's a source of joy for me. Vedanta, according to Vedanta, it's a misconception. Because according to Vedanta, according to our Shastras, the world, which includes people, objects, relations, anything in this world, it can neither be a source of joy nor be a source of sorrow. An object does not carry joy or sorrow in it. Then what is the world? The world is only world. We alone categorize the world as, this is my source of joy, this is my source of sorrow. The object by itself does not have anything attached to it. That is why if the object has this attachment, if jalebi has got this sense of joy attached to it, then everybody who should love jalebis. But there are some people who do not like it also. That is why when some people enjoy Western music, heavy rock and roll, they could be enjoying in bliss, hearing that. And for some others, it will be super heavy noise and it will be a source of headache. So objects do not carry whether it is a happiness or sorrow. Anyway, coming back, the first mistake we commit is whenever we dwell upon something for a certain period of time, the mind tends to get attached to it. It gets the attachment could be it could be to say, I like this person so much, or I start disliking this person so much. So it starts to build upon it. That's why even a particular advertisement tune, we may not like it. But if we go on hearing that tune again and again, what happens repeatedly without our knowledge itself, we start singing the tune soon. The mind has got that capacity, it starts taking it in. We initially disliked it, but now we are singing it. And the same thing, if it is wonderful, it is appealing, this is beautiful, this is nice, I want to have it, then, or it's a source of joy, it is appealing to me, that is called as Sangaha. So Bhagavan says, Vishaya Dhyanaha Dhyayate Vishayan. So Vishaya Dhyanat, then what happens? Sangha Jayate. Shankaracharya, when he actually uses the word Sangaha, when he says Sangaha, he uses a word called Pritihi. Pritihi means, when we think of that object, Pritihi means whenever we think or deal with that object, we get this feeling that it is a Sukha Hetu. It gives me Sukham. It is my reason for joy. It is my reason for glow. It is beautiful. That feeling we get is, the feeling that we get is called Pritihi. We have heard this term called Shobhana Adhyasa. Shobhana Adhyasa means it creates an attractiveness in our mind, a fancy for that object. This is the second stage. What is the next stage? We will see it there are a few more steps that Bhagavan has given. It's an 8-step process, 8 steps. The next few steps we will see in the next class. Any questions or comments? Okay. If not, we will see again in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.